I was able to scale this e-commerce brand right here to $113,725 per month in revenue in just 15 days alone. And in this video, I want to give you the 5 unconventional things we did to make this happen. But this scale was so insane that the CEO of this brand right here literally said that orders were coming out of his ears because there were so many to begin with. And the reason why he said that was, if we take a look at just the last 12 months alone, this brand has never achieved this level of scale to date. I mean, the biggest month it had prior to our entry, which we started working with this brand early in January of this year of 2024, but this brand had started in early September of last year. And since then, the brand had its ups and downs. December, which was supposed to be a better month for this brand, ended up being a not such a great month. But that's essentially when we came in and when we started work with this brand. And so far, just within the first 30 days of January, we've been able to increase sales by 75% compared to the previous period, just by doing a few select things. Now, before we get into the 5 unconventional things we did to make this happen, let's first go over the numbers. Now, just within this month alone, we've been able to send roughly $8,500 so far in total ad spend and generate roughly $45,000. Although this number is a lot higher because this brand gets 80 to 90% of its traffic and revenue from Google Ads. But during this time, we've been operating at a 5.30x ROAS. Now, if we compare the last 14 days to last 30 days to the previous time period, we can see for this brand, actually, this was a total increase of 144% in revenue and the ROAS of 153%. Absolutely insane numbers. But if we take the last 30 days into account and compare to the previous 30 days, we can see that it actually says minus 24% in revenue. However, this is where the problems actually arise for this e-commerce brand, because prior to our entry, this e-commerce brand was actually recording their conversion 2 times to 3 times more than normal. If we look right here, during this time period, there was a GA4 tag tracking and recording the data, as well as a purchase tag directly related to Simplification, which is a Shopify app. This brand was not doing anywhere close to this amount in revenue, but despite that, that's what Google was saying, which meant this number, it was much lower than what it was actually reporting here. Along with that, there's a few other problems which we noticed that were going on with this brand, which led us to this 5 unconventional approach. The first problem was that during this time period, according to Google at least, and it wasn't correct, but the highest revenue day it had was $3,000 in revenue. And if you take the conversion tracking issues into account, this was probably closer to $2,000 or even $1,500. But that was the biggest amount in revenue it had done. It had not done anything above that. Second problem was there was a lot of widespread chaos within the account as a whole, and not just with the conversion tracking issues, but just the total number of campaigns, because during that time, the campaign approach was very fancy. There was just a lot of things going on. I mean, during that time, there were 11 different campaigns running, spending money. Some of them were not even generating any types of results, but they were still spending money. And the third most problematic thing was there was really no proper structure at all for this Google Ads account. And when you combine that with improper conversion tracking, things were just a big mess. So this is essentially what caused us to go and do this first unconventional thing that we normally wouldn't have done for any other brand. And this was to actually descale the accounts. Now, this is very unconventional because we don't like to just come into any brand, whether it's a client's brand or just a brand in general, and then descale the account. However, in this situation, it was absolutely necessary because of the widespread chaos. So what we did, as you can see right here, was we took this brand and we lowered the ad spend from $700-800 a day all the way down to barely $80 a day. We decreased it by 10x because we wanted to, number 1, focus on stability, and number 2, get realistic numbers that could actually help grow the ROAS realistically, because the numbers before were super inflated and just incorrect all over. So we had to take a step back in order to take 2 steps forward. However, during this time, it was a very big issue because, as you can see, the sales apparently went from $1,000 and above per day to barely $100 $100 to $200, which was a very negative drop for this brand. But it was just needed because we wanted to, again, stabilize the ROAS with real numbers so that we could eventually start scaling. But during this time, along with just improving conversion tracking, we were heavily optimized on the product feed side of things, because without a proper product feed, without a feed that has no disapprovals, it's always going to be a lot of fluctuations within the account. And that was a very big problem for this brand, because the products that this brand sells are related to dog vaccines, dog related drugs, etc. And because of that, if you look right here, a lot of these products were actually disapproved, and we had to find a workaround for this, because with disapproved products, it just makes the entire job harder. Like, for example, a lot of the products were disapproved for prescription and behind-the-counter drugs related policy violations. But in addition to that, we were kind of more focused on doing competitor analysis during this descaling phase, because this brand, it's in a very competitive niche, which means we had to find an approach which really was different from the rest and which stood out from the crowd. This eventually led us to the second unconventional thing which we did, which was the 3-1 launch approach. Now, we don't normally do this for any brands out there. However, based on the results for this brand, based on the campaigns that had already run in the past, we decided to go with a shopping heavy approach, because this brand, it needed results fast. It had already gone down to barely any sales, and we wanted to turn things around fairly quickly. So we implemented the 3-1 launch strategy. This was just 3 performance max campaigns and then 1 standard shopping campaign. The approach was fairly simple here. We wanted the performance max campaigns, one of them to go after testing. One of the performance max campaigns, the approach there was just to be a catch-all campaign, meaning a very high bid so that that specific campaign could go out and find the highest quality of traffic. And then the third performance max campaign which we had running was just to target all of the products which were not really getting a lot of the ad spend within this original campaign right here. That was it. Fairly simple approach, just a 3 PMAX approach there. And then this second campaign which we launched, which was also a standard shopping campaign for catch-all purposes. And this had a very high bid. The reason why we launched 2 separate catch-all campaigns is because one of the performance max campaigns that was catch-all, although it was going after the ideal audience, it was supposed to be getting us those sales which it might have potentially lost. We wanted to also incorporate more manual bidding into this approach to have more control over everything and to ensure that we were even getting even a more higher quality of traffic compared to what this PMAX catch-all campaign was doing. And it actually ended up working. I mean, just within this time period alone, within the last 14 days, because a lot of this approach was changed just 15 days ago, we can see the revenue actually changed from barely getting any profitable ROAS to then doing $2,000, which was one of its biggest amounts yet, just within 2 days of launching this campaign approach, and doing it at a ROAS of a 8x to a 10x. This was not imaginable for this brand, because last month, even with improper conversion tracking, it was saying the ROAS was a 3.91x, when in reality the ROAS was actually more closer to a 3.20x or even lower than that. But this was a very big feat for this brand, and we were achieving big days with this approach. I mean, one of the biggest days we already had was a $7,000 day after spending just $200. Once we were getting these results, once we were already kind of in the scaling phase, because by this point we already knew that things were working and it was time to go heavy on the budget scaling. So we took that $100 a day budget and bumped it up to almost $500-600 a day. But the third unconventional thing we did now was an approach simplification. We actually took a step back and lowered the amount of things the campaigns were testing. We actually made the campaigns very direct and very straightforward. So with very little restrictions and going after only a select few products. We just essentially came in and optimized everything, cut out all of the fluff, and then we went to the insight section to get all of the data which I was ranking for to further make the backend better. So in terms of the product titles, descriptions, etc. And that eventually then led us to the fourth unconventional approach here, which what I like to call the audience supercharge approach. And essentially the way it works is you need to incorporate a lot of the audiences that you already have, whether it's abandoned cart people, people who initiated checkout but didn't purchase, etc. And you need to add these people into your Google Ads backend. There was so much previous data from abandoned cart people, from people who had already purchased from other avenues such as Facebook ads, organic, etc., that we could just supercharge the algorithm with Google Ads using this unconventional approach. And that's exactly what ended up happening here. But the fifth and final unconventional approach we took here was to focus more on the search impression share and click share. Because again, 14 days, we can see the search impression share hasn't really budged, or the click share hasn't really budged either. But if we look at it in the last 30 days, although search impression share still claims to be at 0%, and this is because performance maximize don't let you see the search impression share directly, the click shares, which essentially are metrics which tell you how many clicks your ads and your approach is getting now compared to what's available in the market, has increased drastically across the board. I mean, on average, we've increased the click share by 8%. That's roughly 8% more individuals actually clicking on our ads. This is a great indicator and something we often approach nowadays, because this means your quality score is improving. Google is favoring your ads naturally more than your competitor. So more and more people are clicking on it. And as a result, we ended up not only scaling this brand, but also increasing the audience size overall. But if you're doing $40,000 per month in revenue right now, you need just a little bit of extra help scaling your brand to the next level, go onto my website at yourmarketing.com and schedule a free call with me to see how we can essentially work together and make that happen. But check out this video right here on my newest Performance Max campaign approach, which I'm using with this account right here to explode it to the next level in the upcoming months.